Good afternoon. It's May 4th, 2026. I plan on finishing up Mark chapter 2. It's not real long. Let's see how it goes. So after Jesus talked about the new wine and the old wineskins, he then moves on with his disciples, and they're traveling and they're hungry. Probably a little tired as well. And it says, now it happened. And that's what I love about Mark. It's suddenly, immediately. Now it happened. It's like, it's emotional the way he writes. Now it happened that he went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, which, by the way, for clarification, is Saturday. For Jesus Christ, the Lord God Almighty, who created everything in 6 literal days and rested, not because he was tired, on the 7th day. He sanctioned and sanctified the 7th day himself. He wrote that in the Mosaic law and the 4th commandment. Okay? Jesus wrote it. And Jesus honored Saturday. Okay? Just let it be known. Historically, it's always been that day. He was walking through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and they went. As they went, his disciples began to pluck the heads of the grain. Now, that's work, okay? To a Pharisee, you're going out on the Sabbath, commanded not to work. They had 600 different ways to know if you're working or not. They had a whole book written. This is how you keep the Sabbath. They used that to control the people's consciences, controlled the way they thought. Feel guilty when you violate the rules. We break the rules, we feel guilty. That's natural. Every company has a handbook. Every church has a set of rules. No one just rolls out and says, yeah, just whatever you feel, do. No. Rules establish order. And the Pharisees maintained a religious thing called the Sabbath observation. And going in the field and plucking grain was a violation. But let's ask the question, why are they there? It's the Sabbath. Where should they be normally? Where would they be if Jesus hadn't said, come and follow me? Where would they be with their family? Would they be in synagogue? But they were in the fields. They were hungry, and they plucked with their hands the grain. But how the Pharisees there, right? They just always there, like the paparazzi. And the Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why do they do what is not lawful on the Sabbath? Now, when they say the word lawful, it's heaven lawful. It's God law. It's God holy law. Like, thou shalt not bear false witness, murder, commit adultery, steal. Thou shalt not pluck the heads of grain on the Sabbath. That's the way they viewed it in their mind. Anybody who violated that had to pay a price, had to make a confession, offer a sacrifice, all the stuff that was involved with the Mosaic system. But then Jesus said back to them, have you never heard or read what David did when he was in need and hungry, he and those with him? So he takes them back to the history, back to David, who they loved. And when David was being hunted by Saul, and not in his palace, not on the throne, life was hard. He had a band of men who were his army, and they would do security. Nabal was one of the people. They protected his sheep from invaders and animals and so forth to get paid with food. And so Jesus uses David's people, his army, to refute their saying that what they're doing is not okay before God. And he's making them think as well. What happened? And if they're true Pharisees, they know what happened. They know the law. They know the prophets. They know the book of Samuel, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings. They know all that. Now, he went into the house of God, Jesus describing David, in the days of Abiathar the high priest. So they did it according to the rules. They went to the top guy, the top priest, Abiathar, and they ate the showbread. Okay, now what is that? That was bread that only the priest would eat. That was bread that they put on the table out in front, full display, and it was to be seen, not touched by the regular folks. It was holy, which is not lawful to eat except for the priests. He also gave some to those who were with him. So Abiathar, the high priest, fully in charge of what he could do or not do, made an exception. Why? They were hungry. It was the Sabbath. They're on the run. They're being hunted like dogs. And he's like, it's bread. What makes it holy? The priest. There's nothing magical about it. They dedicated it to the Lord and they put it on that table in their house. And in desperation, they were willing to take a risk and ask the high priest for food, and knowing it would be bread like this, showbread. And Jesus tells them, this is what that guy did. One of your kind of guys. Keeper of the law, keeper of the ways of Moses, establishing the right way to do the sacrificial system. And Jesus said then, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. So, by saying this, the Sabbath was not made for men to make up a bunch of rules, as the Pharisees had done, about what you're allowed to do, either by written law or by example. Like in the church I came out of, we were Sabbatarians, Sunday Sabbatarians. And it was kind of the elders, leaders, deacons, you don't watch sports on Sunday or any TV. You go to Sunday school, which was an hour long at 9:30. Then you spend a half hour preparing your heart. Morning service starts at 11. There's 3 or 4 hymns, there's prayer, there's offering, and the preaching would start around 11:45 and it would go for an hour. Then it would mingling, go home, take a nap, eat, beautiful meal. I did this with my wife's family Sunday by Sunday when we were in Jersey. Then you go home, eat, take a nap, get up, have a snack, and go to evening church. Another stand up, sit down, hour-long message, hour and a half at least, and then you go home. That's an honorable, demonstrated way to keep the Sabbath in that context. And then once I left, I realized that was how, it was family member that was the main pastor, they managed the people. You were going to make it as a leader in that church if you did Sabbath. If you didn't do Sabbath like that, there was no way you'd be an elder or a deacon or much less a door opener. You had to be someone they could trust to keep the Sabbath the way they said you keep the Sabbath. You can't do business on the Sabbath. You really shouldn't talk about business on the Sabbath. Anything but the Word of God, which was a good thing. I mean, the Jews, Orthodox Jews, they don't watch TV on the Sabbath. They sit and read Torah, read books about Torah on the Sabbath. That's called Sabbath keeping. It's practical. But what Jesus is trying to make clear is that that's not what the Sabbath is for you to make rules. The Sabbath was made, designed, set forth for man. Now, it's going to take a step, which I do. If you go back to the first week of creation, the Sabbath is the seventh day, the day that God looked at everything he made, said it was very good, and he said it was done, it was complete, and he rested to enjoy, right? Not any other reason. There's some, God reasons, but, and I often say that's represents 6 days, represents 6,000 years. If 1,000 years is a day, everything's in God's timetable, but it makes sense. The number 7 is an incredible number. It's a number of perfection and completion. So that number 7 day, that was alive and well in the days of Jesus in the Jewish system, you had to keep it. It was a holy day. It was connected back to the days of Moses and creation. It was preached, it was taught. And it was like, early days of America, the Sabbath laws, all the restaurants closed, all the grocery stores closed, shops closed, only hospitals and emergency type things were open, because Sunday in America, in times past, was viewed as a holy day. Everybody go to church, which isn't a bad thing, obviously. Not a bad thing. It's better than doing the Super Bowl and then doing all kinds of hedonistic pagan things at halftime and all the commercials. How can you think about God with all this energy going on? And for us, with kids that play sports, what are the whole weekends tied up in? Run around, ball fields, courts, whatever. But the intent of God for that day is for the millennial reign, when we will enjoy the earth without sin, without resistance, without war, without disease and plague and famine. No, we will have the whole earth and the plenty of the earth, and we will enjoy it. As the disciples were eating the grain that was on the heads of the stalks, they were kneading it, they were eating it, they were enjoying it. Sabbath was made for enjoyment, to set aside normal activity and enjoy God. That's what it was built for. The final chapter of human history is the rest of God. It is the final rest. It is 1,000 years of absolute control of Jesus over the nations on this earth. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, because that's true, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Right? So, if you put him as Lord today, it's Monday. And he is your reference point. He is your source of comfort. You worship, you pray, you talk to him. You ask his advice, wisdom. You seek his face to get closer. You draw near to him. And it's Monday, right? What does the Bible tell us in the New Testament? Romans 14. One man regards the day, another man does not regard the day. But let each man be fully persuaded, Paul says, in his own mind, that his conscience would not be violated. Your conscience is the sacred thing. If you feel shame and you feel like you're doing something wrong, then don't do it. But you have to educate your conscience. And here, we're educating your conscience by saying Jesus Christ is the Lord, the Master of the seventh-day millennial reign. That's the ultimate Sabbath. Everything else that you and I have lived through, if you're churchy, and if you've been to part of the church thing your whole life, it's all about the system that they're building, the rules, the regulations, the politics. But Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, which is the final rest that we're all longing for, and it is yet to occur. Every other Sabbath leading up, or feast day, celebration, is but an attempt, a feeble attempt to act out that Sabbath. Now watch this. If you could put yourself in a position where you could be doing exactly what you're supposed to do, as Jesus did, listened to the Father, went out and did it every day of his life, 100% perfect obedience. If you could be doing your work, doing your family life, and none of us is perfect, but if you could get to a place where you are operating in such close sense of heaven, right there on your shoulder, giving you guidance while you're working, you're beginning to enter the rest that is coming to the earth when Jesus is here on his throne in Jerusalem. So here he declares in Mark chapter 2 that he owns the Sabbath day, which is the Sabbath rest, which is what we're waiting for. So may God bless the reading and meditation on his word.